So with our handsome Mr. Z, Zeus, I know that he is starting to get much larger, and I know at times when he decides he wants to go check something out or he notices a distraction, I know I've given a couple tips as to how to help work him in certain bubbles to maybe help it be a little easier on both of you guys. But I know for some of my students too, as their puppies get larger, and even though you've been working really hard on your loose leash walking, and he's been doing a really nice job with that in general, I know as adolescence hits and there's some lovely genetics that are poking out, and then there's also on top of it, just novelty becomes exciting and a little overwhelming, or just like big feelings towards novelty can happen. So I know at times when he does notice something, he has a bit of a harder time bringing it back. Um, so I was going to mention, I know we discussed a little bit with head collars here and there. Again, head collars are not something I just go ahead and slap on a dog and say, good luck, hope you make it. Head collars can be used inappropriately, just like any other piece of equipment. But as we all know, I prefer to typically start off and stick to normally body harnesses that are non-restrictive and that don't tighten and that are the Y shape. So it allows for full mobility for your dog's shoulder blades, but also in general for their dog movement to be natural. So it's not being affected by a harness that is becoming snug or squishing them in certain bubbles. So when it comes to Mr. Z, right now we're just warming up with a couple little find its just to get him excited about moving around the environment and doing some honing in on me. But what I would like to do is start to practice a little bit more. We have been working on and off with the head collar sometimes while he's here, in the sense of getting him comfortable with it. I have not yet gone to the point where I have hooked up a leash to it. So remember, when you're first starting anything novel, you really want to be careful as to how you're doing it. So if, let's say, we're trapping him with the equipment, this could even be in a body harness, and you can start to create a negative association with the gear. So we want to be careful that we're not forcing the situation and that we're allowing the dog to go at their rate while still getting a comfortable experience, from both ends. So for the handsome guy, when it comes to a head halter, I really prefer a Halti or for example, Walk and Train or a similar brand. Not all of the Haltis are designed the same. So I don't really love the ones that continuously tighten as there's pressure. I like the ones that there's openness to the muzzle. The dog can pant really comfortably. It's got a nice squishy nose band. The difference between the Halti brand and, for example, the Gentle Eater, and I'll just show you what I have for the Halti or the Walk and Train brand, which is another one, which is kind of very similar in its design, is the Gentle Eater brand. I'm not a huge fan of because it is really snug around your dog's muzzle. And the reason behind that is that's the only way it kind of stays on the pup's face. So remember, your dog does have a very sensitive muzzle. They have a sensitive face. Remember that if the gear is being yanked on and pulled on and sort of being bombarded, your dog will start to blow through this piece of equipment too, just like they could have done with the harness or other pieces as well. So again, I don't like to have the tool be the only reason the babe is not pulling. But the difference between this and, let's say, a harness is when you have sometimes control over the head, you have more control as to where the body's going to go. This doesn't mean I take a dog that has no previous skills and slap on a head collar. I would much rather have them start learning what loose leash walking is on a body harness, because then while the pup is learning and you're learning, no one's getting yanked on by their head or neck area. You will never want to hook up a head collar to, for example, chewing's optional. You'll never want to hook it up to a longer training leash. So that would be, you'd want to use a body harness. So a body harness, if you're going to be working on recalls or distance work where the dog has got a long training leash attached, so 15 and above feet wise, I would still only rock a head collar with like a 6-foot leash at best. This doesn't mean that you're going to be constantly tight on the dog's nose and tight on his harness, on his leash, because if so, then the tightness might make it seem even more uncomfortable and a little bit spooky. And we want to try to keep this as benign as possible. So typically, I know there are some folks that say, you know what, I would never use a head collar. I will only stick to a body harness. And that is a great option if plausible. For some folks, their dogs start to outweigh them, and the safety concern is why I sometimes will bring up a head collar. So if your dog, even in the yard while you're practicing, sees something and they can pull you down or hurt you by mistake, then it might be one of those situations where a head collar could be a potential for that dog. But as I mentioned, we want to have a good base, and Mr. Handsome does have a nice foundation, and so do you guys, with how to create loose leash walking, how to create engagement, how to reinforce the things you'd like to have happen again. So it's not like he's a brand new beauty and we're just slapping on a piece of equipment and magically hoping he's going to not pull anymore. So when it comes to head collars, again, this is the Halty, or Walk-In Train is another brand, and I guess this one's a Walk-In Train. So this one, for example, you see it has these little side straps. Those are the parts that hold the noseband in place. The noseband is nice and wide and open. This one would normally have a safety, like a little piece of another material, nylon, connecting to here to what you could then clip onto a collar or a harness. So if this were to ever fall off and then have an issue, you're still attached to your dog if they don't necessarily have a recall or their flight risk or what may ever be the scenario, the case. So with this bad boy, what I would recommend is you want the dog to be the one that comes into the thing, not you just placing it on them. So in the beginning, I might offer it, have him check it out again, yes, and feed for that. He's like, it looks delicious, do we eat it? So excuse me, if he's a little bit unsure if we're supposed to consume the product, because it does smell like other dogs, it's got some good aroma to it. It could be sometimes you're just holding it and you're doing easy peasy skills near it. So I might go and do a little, sniffing moment where you can check it out and then feed for that. So again, you want to smell? He's like, I'd like to eat it. So if it seems a little delicious, I'm going to actually leave the noseband open. The head collar is just clipped right now, the part that goes behind his head. But I'm going to go ahead and see if I can feed a little bit again as he goes and he moves into the head collar. So I offer it, but then he has to move in to go grab the snacks. If, again, this was too spooky, like the dog is startled by the piece of equipment, they're moving away or backing away, you're not going to chase them around with the piece of equipment. You may have to start even softer than this setup. So remember, everybody's dog is at a different place for comfort range, understanding, skill set. So, and again, each individual dog has different life experiences. So we want to make sure that when we're practicing this, it's not overwhelming or stressful. So right now, all we're doing is, as Mr. Z is poking his little nose through, this can also be practiced with like a Dixie cup, a leash handle where you have just the openness to the leash handle loop that you would normally put on your hand. And that you could use to have him target and putting his little nose through it. So the benefit of these skills is it could also help with muzzle training down the road if you ever would like to. Remember, muzzle training I find to be immensely beneficial. Because remember, if muzzles are only used when your dog is having a really hard time with something or something traumatic or painful is going to happen, the muzzle is one more thing that brings loss of control and fear. So muzzles should not be negative. They should not be just slapped on to prevent something from happening in the sense that you've never practiced with the gear prior. Muzzles can be a great way to help your dog feel safe when things are a little harder. They're also great for dogs that sometimes tend to ingest things they shouldn't, and they have a hard time with that. So there's a lot of medical reasons behind muzzling at times, but it's not the mesh muzzle that has no pant room and no capabilities for food or water intake. So we want to check out some awesome muzzle groups that I had mentioned, in some of the documents. Those could be great ways to even practice head collar training. So, but you'll see that Mr. Z, again, we might unclip the buckle, and I'm just going to see how he feels with sometimes wearing it for a few moments. But remember that if this is really hard, I will take it off, and I don't want him to think that I'm just going to go ahead and bombard him with something novel. So, but I just want to see how he's going to do. So again, I like to feed, and then I'm going to practice with the clip just behind his head, and then we're going to slip it off. So when the food is gone, the gear is gone. I want him to think that the food comes out when the gear is on, so that way he starts to build value in that this is the thing that brought along the paycheck. So again, for Mr. Z, we're feeding. I'm holding the strap. I'm just going to try and put it behind his head for a little bit, so I'm not even attaching it yet. And we're just feeding. And then again, there's a little tidbit on the floor. Good job. And we're kind of moving it out of the way. So again, just wide open. Nice job, sir. So again, we'll try once more. Again, strap behind the head a little bit, feeding. And remember, this is not going to be attained in just like 1 or 2 little sessions. I would recommend to, obviously at home when you're working with this, go at his rate, because we don't want it to be like this is the only reason he is not pulling. But I would make it where, again, if you're worried about your safety and his at times, he's like, hold on, there's a good smell. So if you're worried about your safety and his, this is where having a little bit more physical control could be helpful. But remember, it's not so we can like overwhelm him or take over, if that makes sense. So again, there goes the lovely train. It's a nice noisy one today, right here, very nice. He's like, oh, it tickles. So again, he's like, oh, floppy noodle. So I'm gonna go ahead and feed. Don't worry, sir, that was very good. So if again, still awkward for the handsome guy, he's like, we're just gonna snuggle with your legs. So if it seems a bit peculiar to him, remember you will wanna go at a rate where he's not pawing at it. If, for example, good shake off, so he says that was a little bit overwhelming at times, is if we are, for example, going at his rate for the head collar, you shouldn't be getting to the point where he is pawing or trying to rub or try to like, take it off. If though he really has a hard time with it, just take your time so he can again get accustomed and sort of desensitized to it slowly. So remember, they have to get acclimated to like muzzle wearing. So the similar concept with a head collar. Already it got stuck in my finger. There you go. So again, the brand could be the walk-in train or the Halty. I believe you said one was coming. Again, I don't want to do the session so long with him that he gets overwhelmed by the piece of equipment, but he was doing a really nice job with putting it on, having the strap behind his head area, and eventually you'd get to the point where you could then clip and unclip and feed throughout that, and then get him cozy with that setup. Ready? Find it. So, but again, the benefit, oh, that one went under the barrier. Here you go, Zeusy. Ready? So if, for example, he is really struggling with the headgear, I would definitely go a little slower, because if we want to be able to use this as a potential tool for him in the future, we really want to make sure that we're taking our time and building it up as a positive but more comfortable association for the handsome guy. So, but we'll give him a little break from the head collar, and then we'll work a few other little skills as well. So maybe we'll try a little bit, ready, Zeus? With a bit of our loose leash walking, or sort of reining it in and kind of bringing it back into us. Nice. So very pretty. And of course I dropped it. My hands are a little slimy after some lovely Zeus saliva. Nice job. So remember too, rate of reinforcement while also practicing either novel skills or when you're trying to change up feelings. I would recommend to keep the rate of reinforcement rather high. And this is where, again, if you're worried about how many little tidbits he's getting, even with his training treats that are like little sausages that come in with him, I like to break those up into 3 to 4 more little pieces. So like right now as I'm practicing, if I've missed one, I break them up. So I'm able to use little tidbits throughout his session. Because even though he is turning into a bigger boy, there's no need for me to have him be eating such big chunks that he's going to either get full or have a tummy upset by mistake. Ready, Zeus? So right here, lovely little name recognition. Good job, sir. But definitely make sure that with the head collar, if you have questions or concerns, check in with me. If you're trying to practice it, another good way too is you could get like a cheapo muzzle and practice, for example, having it be stationary, like in the box it came in, sitting upright, and you can load it with a little bit of either peanut butter or cream cheese or Cheese Whiz, and then get your babe to, on their own, go to that little station, lick, and then they feel the thing around their face, and it's at their rate. So there's a lot of really great muzzle training tips out there. I think is Force-Free Muzzle Training is another Facebook group. There's, of course, the Muzzle Movement. I know Miss P says, when's it my turn to practice? So, and then when it comes to another great muzzle, let's say company or something, there are also the muzzle training and, no, what's it called? Yeah, Muzzle Training and Tips. There we go. Sorry about that. They have now a really nice website as well as a Facebook group. I like the information for the muzzles and the muzzle measuring and sort of practicing with the muzzles, but they do have other equipment on there that I don't necessarily agree with for welfare reasons. But otherwise, for the help of the measuring and acquiring the right sizing for your dog, the Muzzle Training and Tips is a great website, and I believe they're out of Australia. But they have some really nice resources. So, but obviously, if we have questions or concerns about any of them, do reach out. But we'll give Mr. Z a little break from this and we'll work a few other little skills. Ready, Zeus? You want to do a little find it? Good job.